You're 29, born in a displaced persons camp in Cyprus in 1947. Your parents were Polish Jews who survived Bergen-Belsen by luck that had no rational explanation. Your mother had a tattoo on her left forearm that she covered with long sleeves, even in Tel Aviv summers. Your father never spoke about the 3 years between 1942 and 1945. Not once. Not ever. You understood why without needing to ask. You grew up in Israel. You served in the IDF like everyone. Intelligence division. Languages came easily to you. Polish from your parents, Hebrew from school, German from a tutor your mother insisted on, though she wouldn't explain why knowing the language of the people who tried to exterminate her family was important. You would understand later. After the army, you studied history at Hebrew University. You wrote a thesis on the Nuremberg trials, 200 pages, examining why only 24 men stood trial when the machinery of the Holocaust involved hundreds of thousands. You asked questions about justice and mathematics, about whether 24 convictions could ever balance 3 million deaths. Your thesis advisor said it was the best work he'd read in a decade. He also said it would make certain people very interested in you. He was right. You're in a cafe in Jerusalem in 1976 when a man sits down across from you without asking. He's 50, gray hair, eyes that have seen things that left marks you can detect but not describe. He orders Turkish coffee. He doesn't introduce himself. He says, "You wrote about Nuremberg." You say yes. He says, "You wrote that the trial was incomplete, that justice delayed is justice denied, that thousands of men responsible for industrial murder escaped accountability and are living comfortable lives in South America and Syria and Austria under false names." You wrote exactly that. You're not sure how he has a copy of a university thesis that was filed 3 months ago. He says, "What if I told you there's an organization that locates these men, documents their identities, brings evidence to governments who can prosecute them?" He pauses. "And when governments won't or can't, handles the matter differently." You understand what differently means. He slides a card across the table. No name, just a phone number. "If you want to do more than write about it, call this number." He leaves. You sit with the card for 2 days. You hold it, you put it in a drawer, you take it out. You think about your mother's tattoo, your father's silence, the 3 years nobody in your family ever discusses. You think about the thesis, the 24 men at Nuremberg, the thousands who weren't. You make the call. The training happens in a facility outside Tel Aviv that doesn't appear on any map. 6 months of instruction that would destroy most people. Surveillance, counter-surveillance, document forgery, cover identity maintenance, firearms, close combat, interrogation, resistance to interrogation. You learn how to become invisible, how to watch a target for 8 hours without being noticed once, how to memorize a face from a single photograph taken in 1944 and recognize that face 32 years older under a different name in a crowd in Buenos Aires. You learn languages. Your German is already fluent. They make it native. You learn Spanish. Portuguese. You learn the specific regional dialects of Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil. You learn to speak like someone from each place, born there, raised there. You learn the history, not the history in books, the operational history, the rat lines, the escape routes, the Vatican officials who provided false papers, the Red Cross travel documents that asked no questions, the networks in Spain and Italy that moved thousands of war criminals to South America between 1945 and 1955. Klaus Barbie to Bolivia, Adolf Eichmann to Argentina, Joseph Mengele to Paraguay, then Brazil, Franz Stangl to Brazil, Erich Priebke to Argentina. Hundreds more whose names don't appear in documentaries, but whose crimes are documented in files 3 feet thick. Your instructor is a man named Ezra, 60 years old, Auschwitz survivor, tattoo on his forearm like your mother's. He doesn't hide his. He stands at the front of the classroom with his sleeves rolled up and the number visible to everyone. He says, "Some people ask why we do this, why we spend resources hunting old men, why we don't let it go." He holds up his arm. "This is why. Because they did this to 6 million people, and most of them never faced consequences. Because justice doesn't have a statute of limitations. Because if we don't remember, if we don't pursue, If we don't hold accountable, then we are telling the world that you can commit genocide and escape by running far enough and waiting long enough. He puts his arm down. We don't accept that. You don't either. They give you a cover identity in month 4. Alejandro Schulman. Born in Frankfurt, 1947, moved to Argentina with parents in 1950, businessman in textiles. They build a complete backstory, school records, business registrations, forged documentation going back 26 years. You study the identity until you dream in it, until Alejandro is as real as your actual name. More real in some ways, because Alejandro is who you'll be when it matters. Your handler is a woman named Rachel, 40s, sharp, no patience for hesitation. She's been running operations in South America for 8 years. She knows the German immigrant communities in Buenos Aires better than the Germans living there do. She says, "The expatriate community is tight. Everyone knows everyone. They attend the same social clubs, the same churches. They help each other with jobs and housing. They protect their own." She shows you photographs. Social gatherings in Buenos Aires, Christmas parties, business associations, men in their 50s and 60s, comfortable, smiling, surrounded by families who believe their father was a middle-ranking bureaucrat who fled the Soviets in 1945. She points to one photo, a man named Ricardo Clement, import-export business, wife and 3 sons. Lives in the Florida neighborhood of Buenos Aires. She says, his real name is Adolf Eichmann, SS Obersturmbannführer, chief architect of the final solution, directly responsible for the logistics that moved 2 million Jews to death camps. She looks at you. Your first assignment is surveillance. We need current patterns, where he works, where he lives, where he goes. You'll pose as a German businessman looking to establish contacts in the community. You ask when. She says, 2 weeks. You don't sleep well for the next 14 days. Buenos Aires, 1960. You arrive as Alejandro Schulman. German passport, business visa, hotel reservation at the Continental on Avenida Roque Sáenz Peña. You speak Spanish with a slight German accent. You dress like a businessman. You are the role completely. The German community in Buenos Aires is large and organized. They have social clubs, German-language newspapers, Lutheran churches with services in German. You join the Germania Club on Avenida Corrientes. You attend events. You meet people. You become another German expatriate in a city full of German expatriates. Nobody asks difficult questions. Everyone has stories about fleeing Europe after the war. Everyone's story is slightly vague about the years 1939 to 1945. This is normal, expected, accepted. You identify your target in week 2. He works at a Mercedes-Benz parts facility in the Suarez district. He takes the 203 bus from his house on Garibaldi Street every morning at 7:15. He returns on the same bus at 6:40 p.m. He stops at a kiosk on the corner to buy La Nación newspaper. He walks the last 3 blocks home. Every day, the same routine. You follow him for 2 weeks. You memorize everything. The way he walks, the way he holds a newspaper, the pattern of his route. You photograph him from a distance. You never get closer than 30 meters. Rachel receives your reports through dead drops, a trash can in Parque Rivadavia, a loose brick behind a church on Avenida Belgrano. You never meet her directly. Week 4. The surveillance changes. You're told to get closer, to establish contact if possible, to confirm identity through conversation or documents. You stage an encounter at the kiosk. You're buying cigarettes when he arrives for his newspaper. You speak German. You mention you're new to Buenos Aires, looking to meet others from the old country. He's polite, reserved. He doesn't offer much about himself. This is consistent with what you'd expect from someone hiding something. You mention the Germania Club. He says he doesn't attend social clubs much, prefers privacy, family man. You take the same bus as him twice. You sit 3 rows behind. You watch how he interacts with others. Polite, quiet, unremarkable. A man designed to be forgotten. Except you have photographs from 1941, from a train station in Vienna, from an office in Berlin. SS uniform, documents, signatures on deportation orders. The face is older now, softer. But the bone structure doesn't change. The distance between the eyes, the shape of the jaw. It's him. You send the final confirmation report. 2 months later, in May 1960, a team you're not part of captures Adolf Eichmann on the street near his house. They sedate him, put him in a car, hold him in a safe house for 9 days, then fly him to Israel, sedated and disguised as an airline crew member. He stands trial in Jerusalem in 1961. You watch the trial on television in a hotel room in Asunción, Paraguay, where you're already tracking the next target. The work becomes your life, a series of covers, targets, surveillance operations, intelligence gathering, each blending into the next until you measure time in operations rather than years. 1962, Herbert Cukurs, Latvia, murdered 30,000 Jews as commander of a killing unit. Living in Sao Paulo under his real name because Brazil doesn't extradite for war crimes, you track him for 3 months. You're not present for what happens in Montevideo, but you read the reports. Someone lured him to a house. Someone executed him there. The Mossad never officially confirms it. You were in Uruguay during that period. You draw your own conclusions. 1965, Josef Mengele, the most wanted Nazi still alive. The angel of death who conducted experiments at Auschwitz that violated every principle of medical ethics and human dignity. Intelligence places him in Sao Paulo, then Paraguay, then a farm in southern Brazil. You spend 8 months in Brazil, tracking leads that go nowhere. The network protecting Mengele is sophisticated, wealthy, invested in his survival. You get within 30 kilometers. You never see him. He dies of a stroke in 1979, swimming off a beach in Bertioga. Natural causes. No justice, just biology and age. That failure sits with you for the rest of your career. 1970s, the mission expands. Not just Nazis. After Munich, after Black September murders 11 Israeli athletes, the operation shifts. You're pulled into Operation Wrath of God, tracking PLO operatives across Europe. This is different work. These targets are young, active, operational, not old men hiding behind false identities. You adapt. You always adapt. That's the job. But the Nazi hunting never stops. You return to it between other assignments, like a rhythm you can't break. Your personal life exists in fragments. You have an apartment in Tel Aviv you see 3 weeks a year. You have relationships that last as long as your cover identity does. You meet a woman named Miriam in 1973. She's a teacher. She thinks you work for an import-export company, the same cover everyone uses. She asks why you travel so much. You say business. She asks what kind of business. You say complicated. She stops asking. Women in Israel in the 1970s understand that some questions don't have answers, that some jobs don't come home. She ends it after 10 months. She says you're never actually present, even when you're physically there. She's correct. You don't argue. You go back to work. By 1985, you've been operational for 9 years. You've tracked 14 targets, provided intelligence that led to 3 captures, 2 extraditions, 5 deaths that may or may not have been operational, 7 men still living free because they're too protected or too well hidden, or because the resources aren't there to pursue them. You keep a private notebook, not official, not for reports, just for you. Names, dates, outcomes. 7 names with no resolution. It bothers you more than the successes satisfy you. You're 38. You look 50. The work ages you in ways that don't show in photographs. You sleep 4 hours a night. You speak 4 languages in your dreams, and sometimes wake up uncertain which one is actually yours. You have scars from operations that went sideways. A knife wound in Sao Paulo, broken ribs in Rome, a bullet graze in Vienna that missed the artery by 2 centimeters. You've been shot at 6 times. You've shot back 4 times. You hit 3. You don't know if any of them died. You don't ask for follow-up. Rachel, your handler, calls you to Tel Aviv in August 1985. Face-to-face meeting. Unusual. You fly in from Buenos Aires, where you've been tracking a former Sobibor guard. She sits across from you in a safe house in Ramat Aviv. She looks as tired as you feel. She says, "How long have you been operational?" You say, 9 years. She says, "The average operational lifespan for this work is 5 years. After 5 years, people burn out, make mistakes, or can't maintain the psychological compartmentalization necessary to function." She pauses. You're at 9 years. Your performance reviews are perfect. Your success rate is among the highest in the unit. She looks at you carefully. And your psychological evaluations show signs of dissociation, emotional flattening, and inability to form sustained personal relationships. You don't respond. Everything she said is accurate. She says, I'm recommending you rotate to a desk position, training new operatives. You've earned it, and honestly, you need it. You ask if it's an order. She says, it's a recommendation. You're too valuable to lose to burnout or operational failure caused by fatigue. You tell her you'll think about it. You don't think about it. You go back to Buenos Aires and continue tracking the Sobibor guard. You find him 8 weeks later. He's living in Cordoba under the name Helmut Fischer. He's 68 years old. He runs a small hardware store. He has grandchildren. The grandchildren visit on Sundays. You watch through binoculars as he plays with a granddaughter in his garden. She's 7. He pushes her on a swing. She laughs. You think about the testimony at his trial, which you read in preparation. Selections on the railway platform. The children sent directly to gas chambers. His role documented by 5 survivors. You watch him push his granddaughter on a swing. You send the intelligence to Tel Aviv. 3 months later, he's extradited to Germany. He stands trial in Stuttgart. He's convicted. He receives life in prison. He dies of natural causes 4 years into the sentence, age 72. You attend the trial. You sit in the back of the courtroom. You watch him testify. He admits nothing. He claims he was just following orders, that he had no choice, that he regrets what happened but wasn't personally responsible. Standard defense, used by thousands before him. The 7-year-old granddaughter is in the courtroom when the verdict is read. She doesn't understand why her grandfather is going to prison. She cries. You leave the courthouse and walk for 3 hours through Stuttgart. You think about justice, about punishment, about whether anything you've done has balanced anything that was done. You don't find an answer. You retire in 1990. Officially rotate to instructor position at the training facility outside Tel Aviv. You teach surveillance, cover identity, document analysis. You're 43 years old, and you've spent 14 years hunting people who committed crimes 45 years ago. The work continues without you. The hunt never ends. New operatives take over the targets you were tracking. Some are captured. Some die of old age before justice reaches them. Some will never be found. You receive a letter in 1993 from Rachel. She's retiring too. Lung cancer, stage 4. She writes that she wanted you to know that the work you did mattered. That 18 successful captures or terminations over 14 years is an extraordinary record. That the families of victims who received closure because of your work will never forget what you gave. She dies 6 weeks later. You attend her funeral. 200 people. Many you recognize from operations. Nobody uses real names. Nobody discusses what they did. Everyone understands. Your mother dies in 1995, age 72, heart failure. You sit with her in the hospital in her final days. She's unconscious most of the time, but once she wakes up. She looks at you. She says in Polish, "Did you find them?" You know what she's asking. You've never told her what you actually did for 14 years, but mothers know. Somehow, they always know. You say, in Polish, "Some of them, not all of them." She nods. She closes her eyes. She says, "Good boy." She dies that night. You sort through her belongings afterward. You find a photograph, your grandparents, your mother's parents, taken in Warsaw in 1938, both murdered in Treblinka in 1943. On the back of the photograph, in your mother's handwriting, "Make them remember." You frame the photograph. You hang it in your apartment. You look at it every morning. You keep teaching at the facility for 15 more years. You train the next generation. You share what you learned, what worked, what didn't. The psychological costs nobody warns you about. You tell them the same thing Ezra told you in 1976. Justice doesn't have a statute of limitations. You retire completely in 2005, age 58. You've spent 29 years in the service of institutional memory, of not forgetting, of pursuing accountability when the world has moved on. The hunt continues without you. It will continue after you're gone. New wars create new crimes. New crimes require new hunters. The mechanism repeats. You live alone in a small apartment in Tel Aviv. You read, you walk, you maintain relationships with other retired operatives who understand the specific silence you carry. Once a year, you visit the Yad Vashem Memorial in Jerusalem. You stand in the Hall of Names, millions of names. Most of the people who murdered them never faced justice. Thousands walked free. Hundreds died comfortable deaths in Argentina and Brazil and Syria, surrounded by families who never knew what their father or grandfather had done. You got some of them. Not all of them. Not most of them. Some. You tell yourself it was enough. You try to believe it. That wraps it up. This story is fiction, but between 1960 and 1990, Mossad's Nazi hunting operations captured or killed dozens of war criminals living under false identities in South America.